Hey there. Welcome to Lead Fearlessly, Strategies of Confident Women Leaders, the podcast that will empower you to unleash your inner strength and embrace leadership with confidence. I'm your host, Katie Winchenbach, and I'm excited to have you join us as we dive into the experiences of extraordinary women who've shattered glass ceilings and redefined success on their own terms. Get ready to be motivated, challenged, and equipped with the tools and strategies to lead fearlessly in your own life and career. I am thrilled to welcome to the podcast today, Louwee Shibata. Louwee is an expert in startups and venture capital. She's currently working with Greenplaces, and she's also a former professional athlete. So really, really interesting background here. Louwee, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for that introduction. I am very humbled to receive. I'm very excited to be here and honored to be here.
To kick it off, I will have you walk us through your journey and how did you get to where you are?
Yeah, absolutely. So, to be honest, I don't think I ever thought to be where I'm at today. But I think we could go back when I started maybe figure skating. And so I started when I was like 5 and quickly realized I had a knack and talent for it. And so I just kept doing it, went to nationals and then internationals, and then trying to essentially train for really big international competitions like Worlds or Olympics or, certain competitions that you guys might know like that. But then I quickly realized that throughout my journey, I wanted something more than just being good at one sport, which is, for a lot of people is still a commendable avenue of life to go through. But for me, I was like, I want something more purposeful and something that I could actually share with people, not just do and win for myself. And that type of realization happened when, honestly, a couple of years before I got into Colombia. And so in a way, Colombia gave me a good, let's say, breakthrough of finding something or finding a different identity outside my skating world. And so then I got to Colombia and found myself really interested in the investing and venture capital and the tech startup space. But it's not necessarily about those fields. It's more about similar how venture capital is judging startups. It's like skating, you have judges as well. So I saw that similarity there, and I thought it was a very interesting connection to make. And so I kind of made my way through there. And then coming from a background of living internationally, living in the Philippines, Japan, the US, I also saw a lot of economic disparities. And so I thought, well, why can we not use these investments for the better good, like for more towards impact? And so that's kind of like where I am now in sustainability tech, but my longer term goal is to be the forefront at responsible investing.
That is so cool. And like, what a winding path to go from competing at international figure skating competitions to investing and looking at the responsible tech. How did you navigate all of those changes? Because I imagine it was a difficult decision to step away from figure skating.
Yeah, so navigating the changes or navigating transitions, I don't think there's a perfect answer to it. I still think I am navigating what this new life could be for me, because for so long, I think similar athletes or professional athletes can also resonate in a way that you do something for so long, that's your identity. And so coming out of it is almost like kind of coming out of water, like putting your head out of water. And it's like, wow, there's a new world out here that's like, something that you haven't tapped upon. And so I'm just honestly learning new parts of myself too, but also at the same time, I think being patient with yourself is also one thing, but realizing that all the lessons that you have learned can be valuable to the next chapter of your life. Because I think a lot of people think, oh, athletes have this set skills that might not necessarily be transferable in business. But what I've seen is like a lot of business people do like athletes, and because there's a transferable skill of grit, resilience, discipline, X, Y, and Z that are not necessarily technical. And so I think I'm trying to find my way into using those past skills or life that I had into like this new chapter, this other world outside of skating. I don't know if that answered the question, but I think being able to look at different blueprints of people's paths and maybe even autobiographies and kind of combine, okay, what is something that I could.
And I love, I love that you brought that up. The idea of, taking something from your past that might seem unrelated to what you're doing now, but being able to leverage those skills. Because I think a lot of times when people are transitioning, whether it's careers or just from one position to another and things are different, it's really easy to get overwhelmed and feel like you don't know what you're doing. But I think your concept of thinking about the things that you've learned and what you can bring with you, it just makes it easier to make that transition.
Yeah, no, honestly, to your point, that is so true. And I think because when you're also an athlete, you kind of just put your head down and keep doing the work and never ask about, okay, what makes me unique? And so now through that transition of it all, like just trying to lean more into like what I could bring to the table as a person individually who've experienced X, Y, and Z types of experiences. Like, how can I leverage that and like bring that out to the world and contribute back? Because I feel like leaning more into yourself has been more of a, I think, better experience for me, because so many people in a world where there's a lot of voices, it's always good to have that, oh, but this is what Louwee is, or this is what Katie is, or, have that kind of, let's say, like trademark of yourself, or like that print of yourself, I think is very helping and like important throughout my journey.
And I think too, that helps you feel more confident when you're being really authentic and you're leaning into those things about you that make you unique. I found personally that helps you really feel confident in the decisions that you're making and like the path that you're following.
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, it's been a whirlwind of a ride, as you can see from where I started to coming here. Never really expected anything. I think also that's something that I also try to keep in mind is to not try to expect, but like just kind of like really be in the moment of things, and then like kind of pointing back to your journey. Oh, this is how my story goes. And then that also in itself, like the story becomes really important of like who you are, where you're going, and where you started. And I think oftentimes people forget that they do have a story themselves to be able to not only tell, but share insights, whether that's just, making coffee, or like, like how to make better coffee. Like it's super small, but there's a compounding interest into what makes your story unique to you, essentially. And so I think it does give me that confidence of moving forward and try to be as helpful to people around me as well.
There's a couple things that you just said that really stood out to me. The first is this idea of having a winding story, because I feel like, especially women, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves for things to be very linear and to like keep progressing in the same, like following this path. And I love that your story really highlights it's okay to not follow one direct linear path, but all of these changes actually make you really unique and successful.
Yes, because at the end of the day, like I can't do me better. I can only do better me at being me, than comparing myself to like someone else, if that makes sense. Like I think during my athletic career as well, there was a lot of comparison because you're constantly judged. And I think that's something that I had to get over of like, no, like, kind of rewire my brain backwards and be like, no, this is the uniqueness of me. And hence, how can I like kind of brighten that up or like share that to the world, instead of kind of giving the power to other people to essentially judge me, because that's just what your career is built on. And so I think there's a lot of rewiring of the mindset and the brain of how to essentially live outside of that like skating world. That definitely has helped me.
One thing that really made me think of when you're talking about being judged and being in that environment where you really like that is your job, is being judged. But I think a lot of us, even not in that athletic environment, are worried about being judged and thinking about how we look to other people. And you've had a really unique experience of having that and having to shift your mindset, as you mentioned, to focusing internally and on you. I'm wondering, like, what tips do you have for women who are just worried about being judged or feeling like they've got some imposter syndrome?
Yeah, that's a really good question that I always constantly think myself as well. I think it all comes down to like responsibility. Like I think we forget that we have so much power in our words and how we change and like just how we wake up every day, how we go to sleep. Like there's almost like this responsibility. It's almost like a startup. It's like there's a lot of responsibility in the mission. So I start to kind of think like that, a way that I'm responsible for like essentially what happens next. And I think there's a lot of power in that. Yes, it can be scary, but at the same time, it also shifts the mind to, wait, I am in control. I can actually move in the direction that essentially I would want to move in. Like, I feel like we almost feel paralyzed sometimes. And so I think just holding that, like what comes into my thoughts, or also just being responsible of your own life and that you have power into your thing. Like do your thing, because the judgment and the criticism will come anyway. But at the end of the day, if you're really busy doing your thing and doing what's meant for you, or doing the thing that you're doing right now, whether that's work or whatever, like the judgment will always be there. It's just, you're just going to have to shift your focus towards you. And so that sense of like groundedness of responsibility in yourself, I think has definitely helped me. I'm still trying to learn what that looks like, but it's definitely a mindset shift.
And it's definitely a practice. Like you said, trying to learn what that looks like in the different seasons of your life. It's definitely an exercise that always keeps going.
Yeah. And like, I think also I'm such a big picture person. And so if you kind of zoom out, really, really zoom out from years on end, like what would it matter anyway? Like, I think the big picture, like helping you visualize what the big picture really is. At the end of the day, we just want to be with people who are great around us and live life in that kind of way. And I feel like we get so fixated on the day-to-day life, which is great, but at the same time, it's always worth kind of zooming back and kind of looking at, okay, what really is important to me? Definitely not people's opinion if I'm trying to live this life great, you know?
100%. I think that's so accurate. And thinking about, venture capital, startups, investing, those industries tend to be very male dominated, What has your experience been like working in that space?
I will say it's a really like heavy bro culture. So it's I feel like I almost had to learn their language of how to do business. Where that, like, it's kind of weird, but like knowing how to play golf, which I don't like, I'm just kind of like stereotyping, that field, but like learn how to play golf, like, drinking beers with the guys. Like, I think it's really, really that type of culture. But I think because that is normalized, I found this opportunity to kind of pull myself out of that and be like, wait, I want to also help create a community that's empowering women, if that makes sense. It's like, thank you for normalizing that. Now I can actually pull myself out of that and be like, actually, there's a community that I can actually support and be useful to. Because I feel like if I try not to think of it that much in terms of, okay, so this is what's happening, but more of like take that as an opportunity and be like, well, it's kind of easier for me now to find, those women that I could like force this impacting community of women and just gender lens investing or impact investing towards female founded startups. I think these initiatives are there because they are lacking, but also the reason why they're lacking, because it's almost like, well, because that's, the bro culture is the norm. I would say in terms of how I navigated that, it's really interesting because I came from a background of really female dominated sport too. So in a way, I think I really just honed in on how I can just differentiate myself from the crowd. I think that's like my mentality towards things. And so it's definitely helped me get over not just conforming, but saying what I need to say and be thoughtful and intentional about the things that I say in a world where venture capital and technology is really dominated by men.
I love the idea of that differentiation where you're like, I'm not part of this, bro culture. I see an opportunity to create something different. I want to bring these women together. How has kind of finding a community of women in the space, whether they're friends or like their mentors, how has that helped your career?
I didn't realize how much of a passionate but also supporting community and like needed community it was until I got into Girls into VC, which is an organization, which is the first organization for actually young women to break into VC and gain more resources. Because it's kind of crazy that up until now, we never had that type of resources or organization. So I think those types of communities have definitely shaped why I do what I do now in terms of impact, but also serving like a community that really needs to be heard. And everyone in that sphere has been more of an empowering thing in terms, because everyone around me is so passionate and also serving that purpose. It kind of goes back to a feedback loop of, wait, I want to be able to contribute in a different way than maybe people previously have not done. And I really commend the Girls into VC's founder for creating that space and kind of like launching that ground of the next gen of female investors in the venture capital space, because it's just never been done before. And so since we are such a, I would say, intricate, smaller group, it also gives more opportunity for people like me who come in and like add new value to it, because it's only growing and it will only be even more powerful later down the line. We've even like a lot of statistics even has shown that a lot of the, I think, financial economy has been transferred to women. I think by 2035, I think women will have more wealth than ever before. And so in that kind of sense, it's just this pursuit to investing in women will just come out even more.
And what really drew your passion for investing in women? Because I think, venture capital, startups, sustainable technology, and responsible investing, those are all so cool. But I love that you've taken it to like the next level and you're like, yeah, I'm going to take all of this that I learned and like pour it back into other women.
Yeah. So statistically, it's about 2 to 3% or 4% that women get capital every year, which is really small. And so that staggering number has just always been kept in my head. I was like, why is this the case? Why can't we not just give equal opportunity to people who are just as capable? I think it also ties back to my passion of when I grew up skating. I had this teammate who couldn't go to international competitions due to certain resources. And I'm like, wow, this is so similar to like businesses. It's like if they don't have the resource to meet their full potential, how can they get there? And so I feel like in those two certain scenarios, the opportunity hasn't even been given itself to fully thrive or seen the full potential. And so my take is like, I want to be able to see and give resources to places where there is potential and there is still yet to potential to be seen or to be had there. And I feel like that's the drive of it all for me.
That's amazing. That statistic just blew my mind. Like, I think it's so amazing because you see so many startups and organizations that are women-led that are doing incredible things. And so I'm so surprised to hear, kind of about that disparity.
Yeah, I just also think that because it's a very male-dominated industry, it's hard for even women to break in because there are certain problems that women go through that women can fix, that maybe only women can fix. For example, women's health. Like, you can't talk to, like, no one's going to listen. Like, it just makes more sense that, yes, like, investing in women doesn't only mean investing in women, but it also invests in like the future of it, like with the problems that we're facing. And I think there's still yet of a balance to be had there of, okay, how can we understand the perspective of what problems in terms of startups, businesses, these certain products, these services, but kind of combine that or kind of interject that into this very male-dominated world. I think that conversation is always back and forth. But the fact that there's only 3 or 2% every year that capital has been allocated towards women-led, women-founded startups is just almost like a no-brainer of like, wait, we got to look at the statistics. Like, why has that been the case? And usually it's because of maybe like the misunderstanding of not having enough maybe women in the field or like just understanding of certain problems that women maybe go through that needs to be solved.
Yeah, that's amazing. I totally agree with you because I think especially investing in startups is such a critical place for diversity, not even just gender diversity, but all sorts of different perspectives to come together and to create change.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think with more perspectives, there are a lot of values to be had there as well, because not everybody's the same. Everybody's different. And so if we can cater and like tap into or invest in different types of perspectives, really, I think startups are like perspectives, right? Because if you have a story, you pitch it to an investor, it's a story that you're also selling. And so in a way, different perspectives do add value to this world, and not just from like a hodgepodge sense, but there is like money in that as well of like, that's why, again, going back to my point, leaning into yourself and trying to show your story of what you've gone through, but also taking that and showing that to the world can be beneficial, not just for you, but to everybody, because it could also solve essentially a potential problem that maybe not only you are facing. And so it creates this camaraderie or not loneliness in this world of loneliness. Apparently we're in a loneliness epidemic, but yeah, it just creates this more camaraderie. I think that's why I love the venture capital, but also just the responsible investing space, because it allows my passion of investing, but also looking at things from like a responsible lens of, okay, why have we not gone this 4%? Why is this 4% still 4%?
And as you've gone through the changes, as you found this clear passion that you have, which I love so much, what skills have you found are the most critical for you in being a strong leader in this space?
I would say I'm still building those, to be honest. I'm still building those skill sets, and I'm still figuring my way into how can I add a different perspective again, or a different take on responsible investing. I do plan to be at the forefront and the leader at responsible investing.
And I think it's so cool that you're going into a field that is newer. I think a lot of women shy away from that. And I think it takes a lot of courage to pursue something like that where, you know, you're positioned to be at the forefront of something new. There's not a path that's been laid out, that's been tried and true for you to follow to get to this point. And that, I think that's just really inspiring that you've decided to pursue that.
No, I appreciate that. It definitely is scary, but I think even for just women in general, like, we don't have much of a blueprint to handle everything. I feel like we all try to figure it out as we go and all the way. Because at the end of the day, these opportunities, if you think about it from like thousands and thousands of years ago, like these opportunities like have been given to us now. And now we're all, I feel like, in this era of trying to navigate as women how to even like move forward, I think, and like kind of exchanging notes to each other, try to be a sounding board for one another, navigating like just everything that has to do with your life, career, maybe love, family, everything. I think we're in this era of change as women. And so that's also in itself empowering. So with that being said, I'm also going to take that opportunity and do something that maybe has not been seen or, you know, done or said before in the forefront of responsible investing. And so I feel like we're all going through the same thing. It's just, I just decided to do it in this field that is a little bit newer and hasn't been tapped yet. My goal is to get responsible investing mainstream. Like that should be the standardized first thought that people should do before even investing in something. And so that's just where my passion and my purpose comes from. Like, yes, I have no blueprint, but I'm here like with everybody else along for the ride.
I love that. And thinking back, maybe it's, you know, to yourself when you were at Columbia, or even going back further when you were figure skating, if you could give one piece of advice to your younger self at the start of this journey, what would that piece of advice be?
For me, and maybe some people who would relate to this, is try to be okay in acceptance of where you are at, and not always the next thing or what I did in the past. In our lives, really, we always think about the next thing. And also being an athlete, you always think about the next thing. But in reality, if you think about it, all great things, or just the calmness of it all, comes from just being where you're at, and accepting and kind of inviting that sense of self and be like, this is where I'm at. And that's also exciting because there could be millions of possibilities more in the future. I think trying to, I don't know, I think of it as like a pyramid where instead of me being at the very bottom looking up, I'm at the top looking up, if that makes sense. Yeah, so like just kind of like being accepting of where I'm at, and I know that what is meant to manifest in life will, good or bad, and I'll overcome it.
I think that's such an important mindset to have, because I feel like so often, especially as women, we're focused on what's next and what's coming and what we can do, and not even being willing to give ourselves the grace when things do come that are challenging. It's like, let's just power through it. Let's keep going. So I love that you talk about appreciating like where you're at and just tackling whatever might come next. I think that's a really refreshing perspective.
I think sometimes also maybe just looking at the problem and kind of just looking at it instead of like trying to fix everything and, let it kind of roll itself out. Sometimes has a better result than trying to fix any tidbits that probably won't matter in the grand scheme of it. Yeah, I just try and be more patient with holding myself and be like, wait, 1 second, how much does this really matter? Or just being here now,
No, I think that's such an important mindset. Thank you so much for joining us today.
I really appreciate you doing this and spreading women's voices out there and tried to be a help towards everybody.
Head to the show notes to connect with Louwee and to follow her journey as she takes over the venture capital space. Thanks for tuning in to Lead Fearlessly, Strategies of Confident Women Leaders. If you've been inspired by today's episode, don't keep it to yourself. Share this episode with a friend who could use a confidence boost. Remember to subscribe so you won't miss out when we drop our next season. And if you found our conversations valuable, please leave us a 5-star review. Your support helps us continue to amplify the voices of incredible women leaders and inspire more fearless female trailblazers. We'll see you next time.